Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. Today we'll be reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 12. Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead, and the verse is 36. Yad Brajamanam Swa Ruchaiva Sarvato Lokastrayo Yanu Birajanta Ete Yanab Vrajan Jantushuyen Nanugraha Vrajanti Badrani Charantiye Nisham Yad Brajamanam Swa Ruchaiva Sarvato Lokastra Yoyanu Bibrajanta Ete Yanavrajan Jantushu Yen Nanugraha Vrajanti Badrani Charanti Ye Nisham Yad Brajamanam Swaruchaiva Sarvato Lokastra Yohyanu Bibrajanta Ete Yanavrajan Jantushu Yen Nanugraha Vrajanti Badrani Charanti Ye Nisham. Yam Brajamanam Swaruchaiva Sarvato
Lokastrayo Yanu Vibrajanta Ete
Lokastrayo Yanu Brajayantan Ete
Yanavrajan Jantushu Yena Nugraha
Navrajan Jantushu Yenu Nugraha
Vrajanti Badrani Charanti Ye Nisham
Shanti Badrani Charanti Ye Nisham
Sarvato
Rajamanta
Lokastrayo Yanu Vibrajanta Ete
Lokastrayo Yanu Brijanyantam Ete
Yanavrajan Jantusuyena Nugraha
Navrajan Jantushu
Vrajanti Badrani Charanti Ye Nisham
Rajanti Bhadrani. Vaishnavis. Yam Vrajamanam Swaruchaiva Sarvato Lokastrayo Yanu Brijanjatan Ete Yanavrajan Jantushu Yenu Nugraha Vrajanti Badrani Charanti Ye Nisham. Yam Vrajamanam Saruchaiva Sarvato Lokastrayo Yanu Brijanjatan Ete Yanacha Rajanti Bhadrani. Yet, which planet? Rajamanam, illuminating. Swarucha, by self-effulgence. Eva, only. Sarvata, everywhere. Loka, planetary systems. Traya, three. He, certainly. Anu, thereupon. Bibrajante, give off light. Ete, these. Yat, which planet? Na, not. Avrajan, have reached. Jantushu, two living entities. Ye, those who. Ananugraha, not merciful. Rajanti, reach. Bhadrani, welfare activities. Chiranti, engage in. Ye, those who. Anisham, constantly. Let's read together. The self-effulgent Vaikuṇṭha planets, by whose illumination alone all the illuminating planets within this material world give off reflected light, cannot be reached by those who are not merciful to other living entities. Only persons who constantly engage in welfare activities for other living entities can reach the Vaikuṇṭha planets. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Here is a description of two aspects of the Vaikuṇṭha planets. The first is that in the Vaikuṇṭha sky, there is no need of the sun and moon. This is confirmed by the Upanishads as well as Bhagavad Gita. Natad bhasayate suryo nashashanko napavakaha. In the spiritual world, the Vaikuṇṭhalokas are themselves illuminated. There is therefore no need of sun, moon, or electric light. It is, in fact, the illumination of the Vaikuṇṭhalokas which is reflected in the material sky. Only by this reflection are the suns in the material universes illuminated. After the illumination of the sun, all the stars and moons are illuminated. In other words, all the luminaries in the material world, sky borrow illumination from Vaikuṇṭhaloka. From this material world, however, people can be transferred to the Vaikuṇṭhaloka if they incessantly engage in welfare activities for all other living entities. Such incessant welfare activities can really be performed only in Krishna consciousness. There is no philanthropic work within this material world but Krishna consciousness that can engage a person 24 hours a day. A Krishna conscious being is always engaged in planning how to take all of suffering humanity back home, back to Godhead. Even if one is not successful in reclaiming all the fallen souls back to Godhead, still, because he is Krishna conscious, his path to Vaikuṇṭhaloka is open. He personally becomes qualified to enter the Vaikuṇṭhalokas. And if anyone follows such a devotee, he also enters into Vaikuṇṭhaloka. Others who engage in envious activities are known as karmis. Karmis are envious of one another. Simply for sense gratification, they can kill thousands of innocent animals. Jnanis are not as sinful as karmis, but they do not try to reclaim others back to Godhead. They perform austerities for their own liberation. Yogis are also engaged in self-aggrandizement by trying to attain mystic powers. But devotees, Vaishnavas, who are servants of the Lord, come forward in the actual field of work in Krishna consciousness to reclaim fallen souls. Only Krishna conscious persons are eligible to enter into the spiritual world. That is clearly stated in this verse and is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, wherein the Lord says that there is no one dearer to him than those who preach the gospel of Bhagavad Gita to the world. Om Gyanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvajutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vidamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamani Hari Priye Vansha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nitai Naminekshe Namirhate Shadamuninanti Techere Nitai Naminekshe Namirhate Shadamuninanti Techere Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. It's so good to be back. Thank you very much, everyone, for existing, being in our lives. It's your heart and soul, and just this experience that we all have of staying in one place as much as possible. Some of us move around, but staying in one place, focused on the Sankirtan movement to the best of our ability, doing what we can together to follow the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada and the great acharyas. That has been such an edifying experience, hasn't it? Yes. Yes. It has for us, and I just see that the value when we're able to stay whatever course we can and continue in a lifetime of Krishna consciousness, some growing up from even before the womb, coming in, some coming in whenever they can by Krishna's arrangement, and all of us contributing what we can. We become kindred in that process, and that makes it all the better. we go through various experiences, as everyone does in this world. Some coming in, we see announcements all the time, more than I can count, of babies being born. And we also notice that devotees, as predicted by the Shastra, are leaving the world too. There's a collective realization, I think we have, that Bhagavad Gita is real. And when we're able to understand what's happening in this world, for instance, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ukramantam stitam vapi bunjanan bhagunan vitam vimudananu pashyanti jnana chakshusha. That if you have studied the science of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, and you understand the soul is different from the body, you have atma-tattva jnana. When someone leaves his or her body, you're not bewildered. You can understand what's happening because you're seeing through eyes of Shastra. Similarly, when we go through, whatever we go through in life, are so-called reversals of fortune, those who become accustomed to following the path of the great acharyas develop a way of tolerating everything that happens, whether it's a windfall or whether it's a reversal of fortune. We're able to counsel one another and come to the point of understanding that everything is happening by Krishna's arrangement. And when we're able to have this real experience that, as I've quoted practically 10,000 times since I've been here at ISV, vidyam chayas, tad vedo bayam saha, avidyayam ratum tirtva, vidyayam ratum ashnade. Only one who can learn the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessings of immortality. I find it very practical. There's not a way in which one can avoid living in the material world. Once you're in it, you're in it. And there's a course that will take place. Patanjali Muni talks about how we're born with an ayu. There's a span of life that you get, and there's also, we have predispositions to act in certain ways because of our previous actions. And at the same time, even as we're dealing with those or even harnessing them to use in Krishna's service, we can very deliberately engage in devotional service. At least the 5 most important of all the 64 items of devotional service, throw in taking Charanamrita, and you've got yourself at least 6. And when one's able to do those things side by side, there's a maturity of understanding, as the verse promises. One can understand that although I'm going through all of the same kinds of changes that everybody else goes through in this world, I'm not affected in the same way everyone else is, because I'm getting a fruit that Krishna promises in the Bhagavad Gita, that as a very simple principle, those who learn to tolerate the urges of the senses, as we quoted this morning, raga dvesha vimuktais, follow the regulative principles of freedom rather than the wanton desires that come into the mind, and what to speak of the suggestions of a modern society to do this or that out of a sense of whimsical fun. We follow instead the path of the great acharyas. We see the result in our lives. What to speak about an individual basis, if we're able to hear and chant every day, we realize for ourselves that we're rising above the power of the material nature. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha hankara vibudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Krishna says most people are just carried away by the material nature. They're helplessly, and at the same time there's so much an illusion that they think I'm the doer. But Krishna says tatvavit in the next verse, tu mahabaho guna karma vibhagoyo guna guneshu vartanta iti matva nasajite. One who's learned the science of Krishna consciousness, studied Bhagavad Gita, and is practicing it, is not in the kind of illusion that other people are. It's a different life. And when we're able to have this distinction clearly understood that we're souls in a body passing through this world, then Krishna says we're able to develop compassion for other people. And therefore, he says in Bhagavad Gita, does Krishna, Atmau pamgina sarvatra samam pashiti orjuna sukham vai yadivadukam sayogi paramo mataha. He says, what's the best yogi? The best yogi, the paramo mataha, my opinion, Krishna says, and that's nice to know Krishna's opinion, isn't it? Yes. That the best yogi is one who has empathy for others. Atmau pamgina means they empathize. Pathy means to feel, and M means within. You feel what's going on for other people, and it affects you. The Vaishnavas are paratukaduki. When other people suffer, they feel bad about it. For instance, if you might see as another living being, like an animal that gets hurt or suffer, then you might also feel it. When we're able to feel, empathize with the ways that Sukham va yadivadukam, people are going through these inevitable changes that are affected by their involvement, the three modes of material nature, and we're able to feel empathy for them, feel for what they're going through, because we're able to know that because we're going through it. We know what it feels like. But we also have an insight into how to separate ourselves from the current of material nature that's carrying everybody away. We feel it ourselves, that we're not obligated to simply be dominated by the three modes of material nature. Instead, we have the option of taking shelter of Krishna in devotional service. And when we come to this position by the mercy of the great acharyas, who have mercifully brought us all together very deliberately, then we have a great opportunity for service, which is mentioned in this verse, to organize ourselves around the principle of taking the sadhana of hearing, chanting, and remembering, etc., and also organizing in such a way that we give it to as many other people as possible. And that's a career. It's a career option. We have internships for that. We have franchises. We have training programs. Of course, there could be more. And we have a field, a large field, which includes the whole universe of those who have not yet come in contact with Krishna consciousness in a way that they can relate to the process and take it up. So what's being offered here is the highest mood of the devotee, that is compassion and doing something about it, which is to organize your life so that you can give Krishna consciousness to others, which means you have to have it yourself. And, according to this verse today, by doing so, you're welcome to go back to the spiritual world. It's in the mood of Prahlad Maharaj. Let's try a couple of verses. Shall we? Yes. How about Prayena Deva Munayasva Vimukti Kama Maunam Sharanti Vijanena Parat. Work with me now, don't be holding back. Prayena Deva Munayasva Vimukti Kama Maunam Sharanti Vijanena Pararta Nishta Naitan Vihaya Kripana Vimamuksha Eko Nanyam Twadash Sharanam Brahmato Nupashye. Prahlad says, my dear Lord Nrsingadev, I see there are many saintly persons indeed, but they are interested only in their own deliverance. Not caring for the big cities and towns, they go to the Himalayas or the forest to meditate with vows of silence, Mona Vrata. They are not interested in delivering others. As for me, however, I do not wish to be liberated alone, leaving aside all these poor fools and rascals. I know that without Krishna consciousness, without taking shelter of your lotus feet, one cannot be happy. Therefore, I wish to bring them back to the shelter of your lotus feet. How about it one more? from Prahlad. What would you like? Naivod vijay paraduratya vaitaranyas anyonya janma nananam sharanam. Here we are. That's not... Okay. Naivod vijay paraduratya vaitaranyas adirya gaya mahamrita magnatita shocheta to vimukacheta sa indriyartha Maya Sukhaya Paramudva Vimukha. And key in this is Shocheta to Vimukha Chetas Indriyata. The Shoche means lamentation. It means that there's a sense in Prahlad Maharaj's heart that he's lamenting that there are others who have not yet received Krishna consciousness, and therefore he suffers. He's feeling anxiety about that. Otherwise, he says, I'm sustained perfectly and I'm balanced and happy anywhere I go because I have Krishna consciousness. So my main concern is how to accommodate them, and therefore he said, I don't want to go to the forest. Mauna vrata shutatapo jayana sudhamna. All these vows people take to go off and by themselves are not effective, he says. But this is effective. If you go into the populous areas and accommodate people so that they can take to Krishna consciousness, then this is merciful. And according to today's verse, to repeat, only persons who constantly engage in welfare activities for other living entities can reach the Vaikuṇṭha planets. So this is a high sadhana, to stay where one can most readily offer Krishna consciousness to other people. And that also requires a lot of self-sacrifice, because in the process of doing it, one has to present Krishna consciousness in such a way that people can understand it, that it's relative to them. And Prabhupada was merciful in that when he came to the Western countries, he accommodated the Western mindset by giving people an opportunity to come into the environment, and he operated by the principle of yena tena prakarena mana Krishna niveshaya. Somehow or other, help people to remember Krishna, think of Krishna. In fact, even the first initiation that Prabhupada gave was not, he didn't mention the 4 regulative principles until afterwards, which was a note pinned to the door of the ashram that said, by the way. And this is by design that Prabhupada found ways to make Krishna consciousness available to people. And he also had to be enthusiastic and innovative. It's pretty enthusiastic to get on a boat by yourself. And then when to speak of to go out by yourself to chant Hare Krishna, Prabhupada mentioned in a lecture I just heard, he said, I had no drum. And he also, and this is something that's involved, one has to tolerate when one goes to spread Krishna consciousness, that people may say, get out of here. Vijay Prabhu, has anybody ever said that to you? In your almost 50 years of distributing? Yeah. He doesn't really listen to anybody when they say that. He just said, oh, you talk to my attorney. But they told that, somebody came over and told Prabhupada, you can't do that here, move. And Prabhupada moved back and just kept doing it under a tree. He was on the grass, I think. They said, can't sit on the grass, gotta. So Prabhupada sat under the tree. The tree's still there, and now there's a Hare Krishna movement all over the world. But his principle was to go to all the cities. And he wanted to go to every one of them. He went to far-flung places, like, name a far-flung place Prabhupada went to. Rasha. That's a far-flung place. It wasn't easy to get into. By some arrangement, Prabhupada got in to talk to a professor, Katovsky, who said, there is no life after death. When you die, everything's finished. But Prabhupada, by Krishna's arrangement, was able to talk to a devotee there, a fledgling devotee who then spread Krishna consciousness. Another far-flung place?
Africa, Kenya.
Kenya, Africa. And how about far-flung places in America right now?
Gainesville.
Cupertino? Gainesville? Gainesville. I don't know. There could be a lot of them. I don't know who's, there's a lot of places. If you want to go to Tennessee, Louisiana, any other states you don't want to go to? Where? You're afraid to say it, right? So that's your new place. Well, in any case, that mood of being daring and active and making Krishna consciousness available to others is the mood of those who have compassion in their heart. And even if you don't have compassion in your heart, we can understand that's the mood of the great acharyas, and by following in their footsteps and doing what they did, carrying out their mode of spreading Krishna consciousness, that as Prabhupada says in this purport, I'll just repeat it, he says that find that place where he said, if you follow the person that's doing it. Where is it? Oh, there it is. A Krishna conscious being is always engaged in planning how to take all of suffering humanity back home, back to Godhead. Even if one is not successful in reclaiming all the fallen souls back to Godhead, still because he is Krishna conscious, his path to Vaikuṇṭhaloka is open. He personally becomes qualified to enter the Vaikuṇṭhalokas. In context here, your lifetime endeavor to give Krishna consciousness to others qualifies you to go back to Vaikuṇṭhaloka. And if anyone follows such a devotee, he also enters into Vaikuṇṭhaloka. So now let's see if you have any questions that will deepen or expand the conversation. Yes, Tejas Prabhu, good to see you. Shishi Kishore Kishori Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I had two questions actually. My first question is that it seems that the basis of doing prachar, of preaching Krishna consciousness, is that when you relish Krishna consciousness, then because you find so much bliss, it pours out, and therefore you want to spread it. But does that mean that people, for example, who are not able to experience the bliss, should they also do prachar or not? Or should they first focus on this internal aspect of doing their own bhajan and then do prachar?
Prabhupada mentions thank you for your question, and it's good to see you. Prabhupada mentions in the third canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, Kapiladev speaking to his mother, that those who come to the temple, Kṛṣṇa adhikaris, and they see the deity and they smell the incense and they bow down, Lord, are imperceptibly liberated souls. And imperceptibly liberated means if you come to Krishna consciousness, even just to see the deity and sit down for a moment, take a little charnamrita, you're in a very exalted position. The Kṛṣṇa adhikari, actually, Prabhupada mentions in that purport, although we tend to demean the Kṛṣṇa adhikari and just say, he's a Kṛṣṇa. As one of Prabhupada's godbrothers, there was some dispute propagated by disciples, and who's better than whom and so forth, and someone had categorically said that, in a way of explaining Shastra, that one of his godbrothers was a Kṛṣṇa, and some of the followers of that person went to him and said, they said you're a Kṛṣṇa. And he said, I have some adhikari? In other words, like, somebody gave me the position of Kṛṣṇa? How's that even possible? So Prabhupada mentions that there's a way in which, he says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, even if someone is a Kṛṣṇa adhikari, but he has come to the point of understanding that there's no difference between Krishna and the deity, or Krishna and his holy name, even such a person can convert people to Vaishnavas. And in the process of taking to the rules of sadhana bhakti, when one first starts to practice Krishna consciousness, Rupa Goswami says in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that there's a sense of relief from all distress. That's not ordinary. Nobody can get that. Everyone's trying, but they end up trying various methods, but they never get relief. But when people come to Krishna consciousness and they understand the very simple principle of sarvadharman parityaja, mam ekam sharanam braja, aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma suchaha, what an offer. If somebody who's just a sincere soul, and don't forget, souls are part and parcel of Krishna, they're really smart because they have the same quality as Krishna. And if they hear from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, just surrender unto me, I'll deliver you from all sinful reaction. And they become enlivened by that. Prabhupada said, no waiting required. If you decide, I'll just follow that, then you also enter into the category of a liberated soul, although there may be more work to do. Still, from such a position, somebody can appreciate the great fortune that they've received, and therefore becoming free from all distress, entering the first three out of the six that Rupa Goswami mentions, starts with you feel immediate relief from distress because you're getting freed from past karma, and you feel it. And then you also feel a sense of entering into a life of auspiciousness, which means technically, according to the acharyas, a life of auspiciousness means you have the wherewithal to do good for others. You know, most people don't know how to do good for others, and in the name of doing good for others, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport here, they perpetrate so much more. They perpetrate an atrocity, for instance, killing birds to feed people. And you know, how do you think the little birds feel about getting killed? Having their little necks snapped and they can't fly anymore. That's not very nice. It's not philanthropic, but if somebody comes to the point of accepting Krishna consciousness, even as a neophyte, they have this freedom from distress, they have a sense of a life of auspiciousness, and they also feel some pleasure, says Rupa Goswami. Even in the initial stage, these three are apparent to somebody who comes in. That's enough to, under the guidance of a devotee, as Prabhupada mentions here in the purport, even if you follow the devotee who's already fully established in ruchi and asakti and bhava and so forth, but has come down to the Madhyama platform to say, here's how to practice Krishna consciousness. And then you follow such a person, even with these first three, of feeling a little bit free from distress, you feel a life of auspiciousness is before you, and you're feeling some transcendental pleasure. That kind of presentation of Krishna consciousness is not only effective, but it also helps one to increase one's own bhajan. How? By the principle of service. Shushusho Shadadanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Syan Mahat Sevayabi Prapunya Tirtha Nishevana. Prabhupada, when he got his orders from his spiritual master very clearly, I was just listening last night, and Prabhupada said it there was a private talk. He said a few other godbrothers were there. It was in Radhakund, and I asked my Guru Maharaj, what can I do? And he said, if you ever get money, print books. He said then I took it from his mouth that he was very fond of books. So then he got this service from his Guru Maharaj, and he wanted to present it to others. And then he said to all of us, kindly help me. And so if one enters into that mood of service to the pure devotee, then one also develops this sense of affinity for hearing. However, there are ways in which we've seen those who don't preach. As an example, this is an extreme example, but we saw it several times when we all went to Vrindavan and Mayapur and Puri with Prabhupada. We didn't always go with Prabhupada to Puri, but to Mayapur, Vrindavan. And then some devotees got this idea that, well, I'll just cut to the front of the line and become Haridas Thakur myself and go straight to Radhakund and sit down and get absorbed in bhajan. And the rest of us went back to our regular daily schedule of Mangalartik and so forth. And the outlier went to Radhakund, and Prabhupada didn't appreciate that they had split off and predicted that they wouldn't be able to survive in that environment. And it was true, they never did. They ended up not being seen again. Or maybe they were seen somewhere, but it wasn't effective. That's an extreme example, but the point is, if you stay with the process, which is hearing, chanting, and distributing at the same time, you get this special, nutritious experience where you're distributing and learning to develop your bhajan at the same time. It's highly recommended. Yes. I know you had two questions, but it's okay. Go ahead, Brajaras.
Tejas can go ahead and ask a second question if you'd like.
Okay, you go, and then we'll go back to Tejas.
I had a question from the purport. Prabhupada writes, but devotees, Vaishnavas, who are servants of the Lord, come forward in the actual field of work in Krishna consciousness to reclaim fallen souls. I was wondering what he means by actual field of work.
Cupertino. Cupertino, Palo Alto. Last night, we're right in the, well, at least we're in the middle of Palo Alto. I guess if you're going to find a place that people go to in Palo Alto, University Avenue would be pretty close to the center of it. These kind of preaching fields, as we just heard, Naivod Vijay Para Duratyaya Vaitaranyas, that Prahlad said, I want to go to those places where there's activity, where I can do some active preaching. Yeah. Tejas, do you have a second question, and then you can pass it to your neighbor?
So I guess one other question I had was, does preaching also only necessarily mean to people who have no idea of Krishna consciousness, or does it also mean does it generally mean talking about Harikatha?
It can mean preaching to a lot of different kinds of people. For instance, we'll notice that the material world has a way of distracting us, all of us, in various ways. And even within our own organization, there's a necessity to, preach or remind people of the purpose of life, remind one another, remind ourselves, remind our family members. We have to talk to ourselves every day. We have to also talk to family members, ashram members. We may also, in an organization, have to preach among ourselves so that we can stay united in the mission. I find oftentimes there's an assumption that we're all just going to agree on everything, but that is generally not the case when you're dealing with individual living entities. There are various ideas about how to organize the Krishna Consciousness movement and what the attitude should be and so forth, and lots of people have lots of different attitudes. So talking amongst those who are willing to talk amongst themselves to come to a way to harmonize the various visions so that they can go on and work together in Krishna consciousness. This is a kind of preaching. And then, of course, you have different levels of preaching where you may have the opportunity, like a Srivasangam kind of situation, where you have like-minded devotees who are more advanced than yourself, where you can hear Bhagavatam and speak Harikatha. And then you're free to explore different levels of understanding. And then you may also, as I just heard this morning, probably giving a lecture at a Rath Yatra, and it was labeled a Rath Yatra lecture. I heard about Rath Yatra, and Prabhupada was preaching to a crowd of new people, and all he talked about was how you're not your body. And I thought, how appropriate that was, that Prabhupada stuck to dehinosmin yata dehe, according to the audience. And this is the discrimination of a person who's preaching. In fact, you can imagine Prabhupada coming, what an austerity, to America. He would like to sit and relish various sections of the Bhagavatam, but who is he going to do that with? When kids from the street came in and said, hey, what's this all about? And so forth. He mentions it in his poem on the way to America, on the Jaladutta, that he would have to bring people into the culture of Bhagavatam for them to be able to appreciate it. So in a summarized way, there are unlimited ways in which we preach. And then to quote a saying I heard from some of our Christian colleagues, one of the famous iconic figures of Christianity said to his followers, you can preach all day long and sometimes you may even say something. Meaning it isn't the best way to preach, the only way to ultimately preach is by your own example. Because people follow that more than anything. So it's comprehensive. And there are different levels according to the audience. And partly that's the meaning of Ishvare Tadadineshu Balisheshu Dusatsucha. We also have to be discriminating when we're talking to different audiences. That's intelligence in presentation of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada noticed that too. There's a sensitivity that people have. You have to be aware of who you're talking to. If you say things that may be so jarring to people, in a particular audience, if you don't judge the audience. For instance, in the corporate world, I just noticed there are certain words, if I say them without thinking, it may alienate people, and they'll just feel, they're just condescending and bringing another oppressive, organized religion. So I may have to say things in such a way that, like, no, we're not going to hurt you. This is an organized religion, and there's a way in which you can participate in this also. As well as, final point, organizing in such a way that people culturally don't feel alienated. That's something that Prabhupada was very much aware of, and he mentions it in his purports when he says that coming to America, he saw that people live in a certain way. If I was to insist on the exact culture of Bengal, for instance, people would become just they would feel alienated. Therefore, he organized the environment in such a way it's like, this is for you, so that they could go on yena tena prakarina manat Krishna niveshayat, somehow or other think of Krishna. Later on, if there's a way of refining things, then fine. Otherwise, different environments for different people, that's also compassion. Being willing to be fluid enough to create a habitat for people so they can survive, and not bringing up every little thing. Somebody comes in the door, they're not used to sitting on the floors. I know you have to sit on the floor. Don't put your legs in that way. Or just insisting on all the little rules and regulations that we feel are important in Pancharatric system. It's so much so that people feel, this is just rules and regulations, and they leave. In fact, I heard Swami Sri Dayananda Maharaj saying once that when he was going to a new place to preach, and Prabhupada said, make sure you don't present it as just rules and regulations. Stick to the essence of the process. Okay, there was one more. Oh, online question. Oh, yes. Yes, Prabhu, you're up. And then we have Malaya Sahu.
Hare Krishna.
That's somebody famous, I think. All right, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Welcome back. Great to see you. And
Thank you.
Be back. Maharaj, I have a question. Many times we read in and we see here in the lectures, conditioned souls and sincerity comes in a similar passage or paragraph. So my question, when I find in myself is, with being conditioned, can I be sincere? I can give a small example from where this question arises for me. So, for chanting, I know I have to concentrate on every word and hear it. I know that that's a sincerity to make an effort, but I'm so conditioned that my mind doesn't allow me. So can I be ever sincere with being conditioned in this material world?
Yeah, just remember Gajendra. Bhaktyatu tosha bhagavan gajayutapaya. This is a nice question because it's the opening of the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj saying, am I sincere enough to do this, to offer prayers? He's being asked. If you've ever been in a situation where somebody pushes you forward and says, go, you talk now. It's like, what are you talking about, me? Look at all these sannyasis and people here. What am I going to say? And that was Prahlad Maharaj's situation. And he very thoughtfully said, well, they're qualified, I'm not qualified. And he said, then he started to consider that maybe all these types of things I think are what pleases the Lord and makes me qualified aren't so important. Then he definitively said that somebody thinks they're qualified. Like, I'm so learned, I know everything. I know the book called Sanat Sujata. In fact, they follow all the rules in there. But they don't have devotion to the Lord. Like, I don't think they'll be effective, even for themselves. And then, of course, he says, Naivatmana prabharayam nijalabha purno, that if you know the principle to serve the Lord, then you yourself will become decorated and satisfied. Then he says, Tasmadaham vikata viklaka ishvarasya sarvatmana mahigranami yata manisham nicho jaya guna visarga guna pravishta huyeta yena hipuman anuvarnitena. He said, therefore, I understand that if I'm just sincere and offer according to my position, the Lord will accept my prayers. And if you're asking the question, Prabhu, then you're sincere. Because people who are insincere, they don't really think like that. How can I be sincere? If you're thinking, how can I be sincere? That's the beginning of sincerity. And if you feel oppressed by the senses when you're chanting, you're not alone. There's a way in which the mind has fearsome godlike powers over us, and it has since a time immemorial. Krishna said that to Uddhava. And Arjuna even balked at the idea of controlling the mind. So keep asking the question, Krishna, how can I be of service to you? And keep asking, how can I be more sincere? And that's the beginning of it. Okay, Malayas Sahu is famous, right?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
He's one of our devotees. Okay, please go ahead, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I thought I will miss you this week because I saw in the schedule you are back. And then when you are back from absence, like a couple of weeks, this will be a really amazing environment. The kirtan will be like super nice. And I did not want to miss it, but I had to be out of town. But then, thanks to Krishna's mercy, I could actually, the hosts here, my friends, they allowed me to attend the class. And they are waiting for me. But then I got the whole class and the whole of lecture and the prayers. I got a book with me, so when I cannot read from the screen, I could read from the book. And I joined in that one. And it's like all Krishna's mercy. thanks to Bhaktivinoda Thakur who gave us all these beautiful musics, the songs that when we read we get the bliss. And we offered prayers yesterday, and I could participate in that, so I feel very blessed. And I have to express my gratitude. I just want to say thank you to the ISKCON of Silicon Valley, this studio system and the design, and Ramananda Sakha Prabhu who like continuously improved the system so much that from 2016 videos to compare to now, the sound is so much nice. I see 2016 video background, like when the host, the main leader is singing, you can see nicely. But when the devotees or everyone else singing, it was not so as great. But now the sounds have improved a lot. And a suggestion to other viewers who are missing out when they are out of town would be join the Zoom one, because they are the participants side, the outside the leader, that sound is much better. So you can participate much better. And so I need to thank Ramananda Sakha Prabhu who did like so silently, does always working, weekends and everything. And the other one would be Krishnangi Mataji and Charunimai Prabhu. I am sure he will be doing that. I'll be missing the mellow kirtan mellows today and Kuladipa Prabhu's nice prasadam, but I got everything else. Like I got the association of all the devotees. I'm not sitting right next to them, but then I got most of it. And I have this my friend. They have Lord Jagannath here. Tomorrow is Rath Yatra coming. So this is one people who cannot actually enter the temple or something, like they cannot have enough to have their own effort. Jagannath comes out from his temple to grace the people, to bless the people, right? So ISKCON is doing like the last mile thing, like Amazon delivery system. They give the last mile one. We see devotees like Marini Mataji. Thank you so much for like her inspiration. Like she expressed her and shares her stories with people. And so this is the last mile thing. They go door to people, like what most we can get, right? So that's when people are not trying, God sends the grace. So that's like so thankful to Krishna, thankful to ISKCON, Silicon Valley, and thank you so much. I'm missing you a little bit of personal kirtan part one, but then I got most of it. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
To those who do go out and meet people, you'll have those who do have the perspective that if I hadn't gone out as a representative, then what would have been the course of that person's day, life, existence in the material world? And we can feel very fortunate that we're able to. Oh, thank you. Happy note. That we're able to offer that to somebody in some far-flung place. Okay, there was somebody else. Tadiya say. See, you say you're usually at the back of the room here. Where is he? I know he's there, but I don't know where he is. Okay, I'm going to read your lips. He's saying, I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Maharaj. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, Maharaj. Sorry. I'm in Dublin, Maharaj.
What?
So I just want to...
Dublin. Okay.
I just want to say one
Dublin,
point
right.
today, which I liked from your class. When you practice devotional service, you mentioned that it will take away the distress. I practically have experienced it all my life. One of the reasons I stick to ISKCON is for this very same reason. Before coming to Krishna Conscious, I was practicing another spiritual group which goes by the name Brahma Kumaris. I stayed there for almost 1.5 years. it took away little distress, but it did not give me complete satisfaction. But when I came to Krishna conscious, then I got all answers. There are so many questions in my life. Why am I suffering? What is the reason for suffering? Is the suffering because of my ignorance, or is the suffering because of my sinful past, or is it something else which is not under my control? So if I look at other processes, maybe Advaitism, or maybe the impersonal perception of God, like the Brahma Kumaris, or maybe the Ramakrishna mission, they all have answers, but they don't have a complete picture of what happens to the soul in this material world and why is there suffering, what is the remedy for suffering. And I just want to thank Srila Prabhupada, I just want to thank the Parampara for giving us the remedies, basically the remedy for suffering. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay. We got some grateful souls signing in today. Okay. 1, 2. We're still in the game.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I have one question. In the purport we read, those just by simply following acharyas, we will also be liberated. So we read two types of statements. Some statements they say, unless you are completely purified of all material desires, we will not be able to enter the spiritual world. On the other hand, sometimes just by following and trying to please, we will be liberated. How do we understand both these statements, Maharaj?
It is explained in the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam by the devas who are offering prayers to Lord Krishna in the womb. That's Tvat pada potena mahatkritena kurvanti kovatsa padam pavabdim. That it's the path of following in the footsteps of a pure devotee, as Prahlad Maharaj mentions in his prayers, is so potent that the material world shrinks to the size of a water contained within the hoofprint of a calf by that method. And Prahlad Maharaj has mentioned this in his prayers, Naisham Matis Tavarukrama. How's that go? Naisham Matis Tavarukrama Sprishat Yanar Tabakamu Mahiyasam Padarajobhishekam Nishkinchananam Navranitayava Naisham Matistava Rukramangrin Sprishat Yanarta Pagamo Yadartaha Mahiyasam Padarajobhishekam Nishkinchananam Navranitayava. He says, unless one is able to have this process of following a pure devotee and takes it very seriously, then that, he said, that's the path to follow somebody who is niskinchana. They no longer have anything to do with the material world. And if you can devote yourself to such a person, then you'll also become like that. You'll develop that quality. In the same way, if you devote yourself to somebody who's full of material desires, you'll also become full of material desires. It's repeated in 5th canto, Rahu Ganaitat Tapasanayati Nachejayana Nirva. What's with me today? There we go. How's that verse start? It says, Rahu Ganaitat Tapasanayati Nachejaya Nirvapanad Grihadva Nachanda Sanaiva Jalagni Suryar Vina Mahat Padarujo Bhishekam. Again, he's saying, it doesn't matter what else you do. In fact, he gets demonstrative about it. He says, you can get one of those ice baths. In fact, you got to go to the Himalaya or something in the winter and then submerge yourself in a pond somewhere. He said, if you do that and maybe get on YouTube and get 5 million views, but it's not going to get you bhakti. He said, you may expose yourself to fire. You may become the perfect sannyasi, grihasta, vanaprastha, whatever. But it's still, you follow all those things, it's not going to guarantee your success. But he said, what does guarantee your success is if you devote yourself to a pure devotee and just follow. The process is so potent. So what is a pure devotee? A pure devotee is somebody who's dedicated to a pure devotee. And the levels of success there are simply relative. But if one has that dedication to a pure devotee, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings in one of his songs, he said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to be your dog. Just watch a dog and see. This is how you attain perfection. I like to watch the dogs. They're in the park and they're just so dedicated to the master. It's like, oh. They throw the ball, come bring it back. Throw the ball, come back an hour later, bring it back. And so he said, I'll be the dog of a pure devotee. And where will I stay? You just tie me up on the back porch. And whenever you're done eating, just throw scraps over the edge. That's what I'll eat. And then he said, if anybody comes to interrupt your bhajan, I'll just scare them away. That's what I'll do. And the Bhaktivinoda Thakur indicates that's the perfectional stage. So if one becomes a Guru Kripa and takes that mode of service, this is the process through which one can become perfect in devotional service, not by one's own endeavor. It's such an important aspect of devotional service.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for answering Tejas Prabhu's question, the way you answered about from the nectar of devotion. I was also thinking of another aspect. If it's okay, I can share. I was remembering Ramananda Sakha Prabhu when he first came to the temple. He just, first day he came here and then devotees were going out on book distribution. And he asked, where are you going? We are going book distribution. And they asked you, would you like to come? He just went to the store. And devotees were distributing Gita, Bhagavad Gita at that time. And they were busy talking to somebody else. And one person came and asked, what is this? And he said, I think it was Ishopanishad. It was Ishopanishad. And then he said, I don't know what this is, but I heard it's a really good book. And that person, just because he heard the sincerity saying that I don't know what it is, but it's a really good book, that person took the book. So I was thinking from the other aspect of preaching also, to put yourself out, though you're unqualified, helps you to go back and learn what you have missed out. In that way, like preaching is a practical field where it helps us to improve ourselves and purify ourselves. So.
And in extension of that, I remember one of the first Sankirtan gatherings we ever had, which was at your house, Hansapriya, after some of the devotees had gone out, and I remember Kameshri and someone else, they had been out that day, maybe their first time. And then we were going around and taking reflections, and she said, as did, I can't remember who was with her, they said, we distributed these books, we haven't read them, and now we want to go home and read them. And I saw how that principle works. When you distribute it, then you get the impetus to read it more, and you see the reactions of people taking them, and the two things go together very nicely. Yeah. And also, we see for ourselves by the reaction of people who are randomly walking through the material world, when we're able to contact them and have an exchange with them, we see that devotion come out of them, it makes it all worth it. And we realize that's why I was here. I met two workers when I was in Wales. They were walking down the street and had kind of work clothes on, and they're a little older, but they looked like they could lift stuff. And I stopped them and I was just talking to them for a few minutes. And the one man who stayed there to accept the Bhagavad Gita was effusive in the way he was appreciating the devotees. And he said some heartfelt things. Unfortunately, on the recording, that's the one that it's harder to hear. But he was saying, just meeting you all here today, this is before he even purchased the Bhagavad Gita. He said, this has uplifted my life, just seeing you here. And then talking to him about the Bhagavad Gita and asking him to chant the mantra, and he goes, oh yeah, I know that mantra, George Harrison, right? He said, this is the most important thing in the world. It's coming from a worker walking down the street ready to go fix something somewhere. And when you see that, you get the vision of how the soul's sojourn through this material world is troublesome, and that it's such a relief when they can come in contact with Krishna consciousness. And as I've said before many times, vicariously we get that when we see in our distribution to others how others become alive, then we remember how important it is to us to take it as well. Those two things propel us. Devavrata.
Hare Krishna. I was just remembering, we've recently in Los Angeles have been doing swap meets, indoor swap meets. And it was about a month ago, Kira Chor and I went out, and I had been doing it every day with Suvarna Bindu up to that point. And when I told Kira Chor where we were going, he kind of looked at me. He's like, we were going to MacArthur Park in Los Angeles, which I didn't know is the most dangerous place in Los Angeles. It's really, really bad. So as we were driving down the road, Kira Chor didn't tell me the place. He said, all right, so he just put it in the GPS and we started driving. And as we're driving in, I'm like looking around, I'm like, no, wait a minute, this is looking like Mexico. And then it was starting to look like India. And then it was starting to look like India with a heroin addiction. So we finally get out, and it's a really, really dangerous place. It's very difficult to describe. The economic situation it's drug addicts selling stolen stuff to illegal immigrants, and there's like this constant loop which is maintaining the system there. And it's hundreds of people on one block of Los Angeles. And it's the epicenter of the fentanyl pandemic in Los Angeles right now. So we went there and we just went in and we went out. The swap meet was really small. Once we were in, it was kind of more quiet. But then on our way out, we were crossing the street, and I was really just wanting to get back to our vehicle and go to the next place. But when we were standing on the street corner, this guy called me. He said, hey. And he looked at me and he said, Hare Krishna. Can I have one of those? I mean, he's like this tall black guy. He's just standing there, and he's got like chains in his ears. And I go up to him. I'm like, here you go. And then I was thinking within my heart, I was like, you have to ask him for a donation. You can't just give it for free. And I said, can you give a donation, man? And then he kind of smudged around in his various bags, and he pulled out a few dollars and took a Science of Self-Realization. And so when Kira Chor and I were leaving, I was just thinking, it's just a covering. Underneath that covering is the propensity to appreciate Krishna consciousness.
You get to see it on the front lines when you go out to do that kind of thing. So just a final word, which is a reassurance that this little bubble that we live in here, called this kind of Silicon Valley, is an authorized environment. There are challenges every one of us will have in our lives, emotionally, physically. What else is there? Sociologically. We all come from different backgrounds, and we have different sensibilities, various cultures. However, if we can imbibe the principles of the Bhagavad Gita and learn to appreciate the culture of Srimad Bhagavatam, really understand what it means, reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all, and that no more cheating, just surrender to God and do it in all the aspects of your life, then it'll become, it has become, what we're doing here becomes an effective environment for anyone who will come in. And the more we can adjust the environment to accommodate people so that they can come along with us, which is very much necessary. Shivananda saying on his way to Jagannath Puri, a dog ran up and said, and he said, he's in. That's the mood of the devotees. They just look and see. If it looks in somebody's eyes, oh, yeah, okay, come here. I know you only look for a second, but you're in. Just like last night, there were, remember, Malini, there was a couple of, I don't know who they were, but they must have spoke Russian because you called in the, you called in Vaisesika. And that they were watching, and you could just tell there was something about them. They were new, right? Yeah?
I'll just say one thing and I'll give it to. So the young mother and daughter, the daughter said that they were in Starbucks, drinking their coffee, I don't know what, and then she heard the singing Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and she said that she felt something in her body, that it's the things, actually she felt something, and immediately they came out, and they stopped, and they were like so mesmerized by the kirtan, and she was trying to translate it to her in Russian, so I felt that they will get more bhav if they spoke to
Hare Krishna. Yeah, they were telling that they heard while we were coming for Harinam, we were speaking with devotees in Russian, so they heard that and they said, oh, we decided to follow also. And they were standing and looking how devotees are dancing, and then immediately they were telling that they're trying to meditate, and I told them about mantra, that different kind of meditation. So immediately, like those looks like pure souls, so they get attracted and they want to come. They take us take our contacts. So just call us, invite us for the programs. So they're out on the streets. Yeah, just have to be there.
So what I saw was them standing there. I looked back in anxiety. Malini picked up on it. She ran over. Then she got you. Then I saw you standing there for at least a half hour talking to them. And you could see in their countenances that they were just taking it all in. And as I observed that, I said, that's why we're here. We're looking for the souls who are going by, who we want that everywhere in all different aspects. And that's what this verse is talking about. If we're oriented towards this, that we want to be accommodating to every soul to make sure that they come into the vibration and that we can take them step by step by the hand into the process of devotional service in a way that they can do it and they can make progress. That's the kind of compassion that Prabhupada then points back to the Bhagavad Gita and says that Krishna has said, if that's what you're doing, he said, there's nobody more dear to me in this world than that person. So that this is the ultimate conception. What all of you are doing here, what we're doing together, organizing around the principle of more distribution and more accommodation simultaneously. That's the highest sadhana that you can get according to the Srimad Bhagavatam. And as we do that, we'll develop our affinity more and more for the Holy Dham. We'll be granted not just entrance into Vaikuṇṭha, but into the Boma Vrindavan. Who can go to Boma Vrindavan and feel satisfied just to stay there and appreciate every one of the deities there and then want to just hear Srimad Bhagavatam? It's those who are out preaching to the poor conditioned souls in the material world. They're the ones that are able to go there and actually sit down and appreciate Vrindavan. So as it says in this verse, you get to go back to Vaikuṇṭha, but even in this life, you get to go to what's even higher than Vaikuṇṭha, which is Boma Vrindavan, the Vrindavan on earth, where Krishna appeared. Who gets to do that? And what I mean by get is that you actually want to go there. And so it's a complete process that we're engaged in, following in Prabhupada's footsteps, that he got it from his guru, he passed it on to us, the same service, and we're following. So I'm very grateful to everybody here within earshot, and I see everybody online and whoever's following this process. We're all in it together, and there are millions of adjustments to still be made to accommodate everybody. And as we do it, we'll find that our life goes by and that we prepare ourselves for going back to Godhead. And we do a lot of heavy damage to the materialistic world, which is so crazy. The whole material world, everyone's gone absolutely insane with all kinds of distractions, and we should feel really bad about that and try to recalibrate the environment by massive distribution of transcendental sound vibration through the written word, through Harinam Sankirtan, and through individually taking time with people to show them the path of devotional service till they can stand on their own 2 feet and then have a life for themselves. And that's the perfection of life. Om Tat Sat. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Lakshmi Nrsingadev, if you so desire, please let us all work together in a sense of harmony and compassion for this fallen souls. Let us save everyone in this material world, starting with ourselves, and create an environment that everyone will want to come into and never want to leave. Thank you for considering our request. And thanks for letting me go on and on in this class. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer, in whole or in part, please unmute and say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nantakoti Vaishnavini ki jai.